We have Clayton Hamilton here with us today. He is the Deputy Athletic Director for the University of Arkansas and also their CFO. Clayton, I will let you introduce yourself here on out because you'll do it better than I will, and we'll kind of learn a little bit about you today.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Taylor, for the invitation, and Dr. Cromartie. Appreciate the invite. I'll start out just sharing a little bit about my background. So I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. Went to University of Arkansas, back in the early 90s. And as I was kind of wrapping up a business degree at the time, I was trying to decide on where life might take me next, and knew I wanted to pursue a master's degree, and kept getting a lot of advice about, pick an industry that you have an interest in. And for me, sports was a big interest. There was not a whole lot of, at the time, graduate programs in sport management. So I, looked at opportunities across the country, landed at the U.S. Sports Academy. So pursued my master's degree in sports administration, and had the goal to combine that with the accounting degree, just to carve out a career in sports finance. One of the important parts of that master's degree was completing an internship, which I, at the time, was looking at opportunities in professional sports, college athletics. This is going to date me, but that was before you could hop on the internet and look at a lot of opportunities. I was sending out, resumes throughout, professional basketball, football, NBA, NFL, especially baseball, college athletic programs, and got an opportunity with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I picked up and moved to Cleveland, Ohio to do that internship. I like to share, I worked for free. They paid me zero. But the investment I was making in my career, was worth that experience. So, worked 40 hours a week in their finance office. I worked game day, part of the Cavs crew. Was just a great experience to see, what a career in sports, a career in sport finance might look like. Probably one of the biggest takeaways for me at the time was, as I started to see, if I wanted to advance in my career and potentially be a CFO one day, I felt like I needed the CPA. Needed to kind of finish out that kind of accounting side of my background, experience, resume. So I moved back to Little Rock, pursued the CPA. I started working in telecommunications and corporate finance, internal audit, just to get some experience. Completed the CPA, and then started looking at opportunities to get in back into sports. And I like to share with students. It was really hard. It took a lot of persistence. A lot of sending out resumes. Again, looking at opportunities in NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, college athletics, anywhere I could conceivably see myself moving to, I would send a resume just to introduce myself and to seek out opportunities. Got an opportunity with the Dallas Cowboys, which took me to Dallas to be an assistant controller at the old Texas Stadium. This is back in the late 90s, but was the assistant controller. Again, doing finance for the Dallas Cowboys in Texas Stadium. Kind of knew in my heart I wanted to be on a college campus. That's really where I saw my career going. So kept looking at opportunities. Got that next opportunity with Florida State. Picked up, moved to Tallahassee, Florida, just to be, at the time, the assistant business manager for Florida State Athletics. I like to share also that both of those moves to the Cowboys and then to Florida State was taking a step backwards in title, a step backwards in salary, but seeing that as an investment in my career and career opportunities. So that was really my opportunity to get on a college campus. Was at Florida State for 6 years, really started working my way up through their business office. An important part of my time at Florida State was getting involved in CABMA, which is the College Athletic Business Managers Association. And there's associations out there, you guys may be aware, for the marketing professionals, ticket sales, fundraisers, compliance, athletic directors, academics. But CABMA was the business managers Association. I got involved early on at Florida State. Great opportunity to network, which is where I started to make some of those connections at other college athletic programs throughout the country. Kind of worked my way up to being president of CABMA. And then the next opportunity for me came at Colorado. So moved out to Colorado to become the associate AD for business and finance at Colorado. I was out there for 3 years when I got that opportunity to come back to Arkansas, back to my alma mater to become the CFO for Razorback Athletics. And I've been back here for the last 13 years, serving as CFO and now Deputy AD and CFO for Razorback Athletics. So I like to share that entire experience. I mean, if you counted the moves, there was like 7 moves in a probably 15-year period. So it was a lot of moving around to take advantage of opportunities. You know, I share with students, if I had graduated Arkansas with one school in mind, being the alma mater, being Razorback Athletics, I never would have gotten here. I'm convinced I never would have got that opportunity, because at some point you got to find a job, you got to get the career going, and these jobs really don't come open too often. So it took me moving to Cleveland and Dallas and Tallahassee and Colorado to create that opportunity to come back to Arkansas. So that's the quick background, Taylor, and I'll maybe pause for a minute. Happy to answer any questions you or Dr. Cromartie or Buffet might have.
So you mentioned the networking that you had done, and obviously it was different just because of the time period then and that you were sending your resume. For someone that is starting out fresh out of their master's in sports management, how would you think that they should market themselves in order to get these job opportunities?
Yeah, I think I would start out just by being persistent. I tell students all the time, be persistent. Like we all, in my view, like all of us that are in these positions in college athletics or professional sports, we've all gotten to where we are because of networks and somebody kind of helping us along the way. And we're all at a point where we're willing to give back. You know, we're willing to now in turn have these type of conversations. I spend a lot of time, meeting with students. I now teach a sport finance class in our sport management program. So I just tell students all the time, be persistent, send an email, make a call, schedule a time to sit down. I think you'll find that administrators are willing to do that, to have those meetings, have those calls. Sometimes it might take a nudge or two to just get that time scheduled, but be persistent to get that time, get those meetings scheduled, calls scheduled, and I think you'll find folks are willing to do that. And don't be afraid to branch out beyond your current school. I've got folks that reach out to me from different schools throughout the country just because they want to connect. And so I encourage folks to, if you haven't done so, to make a list. For me, when I was looking for those opportunities, I kind of knew geographically where I wanted to live, kind of in the Southeast, Midwest. What was kind of the areas I was targeting. So I started making a list of those schools, the Power 5 schools in those, different states or the different programs I might be willing to consider at some point. And then just start reaching out. See if you connect with an athletic director, a CFO, a deputy AD, whatever that may be. And I think you'll find folks are willing to respond. It may not be everybody, but if you reach out to 10, I would bet you get 4 to 5 responses, and just be persistent. And I often find folks are willing to have these type of conversations.
Nowadays, just with the level of degree and the smaller market, which is with everyone, again, kind of having the same degree, do you think that it is easier for someone to have a athletic director position at a high school level on their resume to then build up, or do you think that they could come right out of their degree from a master's to get into the collegiate level?
Yeah, and I think I see it
hard
come both directions, Taylor. Like I tell folks all the time, like I like to describe my background. It worked for me at the time. I was kind of on the early end of getting into college athletics, coming from a accounting finance background and combining that with a sport management degree. Now, certainly you see more sport management programs out there. I described my path. It worked for me. Doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. I encourage students to try to diversify with their education and experience if they can. I share this example that I make sure you can still hear me, Taylor. I'm getting okay.
Okay.
My screen went black all of a sudden. I had a student approach me one time with an undergrad in sport management, a master's in sport management, PhD in sport management, was having a hard time finding a job, and he wanted to work in our business office. And I explained that we're leaning at the time towards students with accounting, finance degrees for these business office roles. So I just encourage students to try to broaden beyond just a sport management. Just make sure it's an internship, maybe it's marketing or compliance or academics, whatever area you might be pursuing, just to kind of build out that resume. So it's not just sports, be able to articulate, here's why I can succeed in a marketing type role or succeed in a compliance type role or academics or business office, whatever that may be. Try to complement the sports with something else on your resume.
Okay.
Clayton, when you were here at the academy, would you say that there was one course that helped prepare you and still guide you towards where you're at right now, or was it the whole entire program and what you learned from it that was a contributing factor?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dr. Cromartie. I would say the entire program. And for me, kind of going back to what I just shared, I mean, that program was the complement that I needed for the accounting finance background. So I had a resume at the time that said, hey, this guy's an accountant. He understands finance. He's got this accounting degree. But I didn't have anything that really spoke to here's how and why he can succeed in a sports type position. The internship with the Cavaliers was critical, and that was a large part of the sport management degree at the time. And so getting that opportunity and experience I could put on my resume, helped me get the job at the Dallas Cowboys, helped me get that job at Florida State. And Greg Phillips actually had some experience at the U.S. Sports Academy. He was my boss at Florida State. That was the connection we had. That was the kind of created that first conversation that got me the phone interview. They got the on-campus interview that led to the job at Florida State. I'd like to share as well that, like your resume, I share this all the time. We might get 100 resumes, applications for a job. We're going to, phone interview 10 and on-campus interview 3, and then you're going to obviously hire one for a position. Your resume needs to be able to get you that phone interview. The phone interview is the opportunity to sell yourself for that on-campus interview and sell yourself for that job opportunity. But, trying to build out that resume, again, that you've got the sports, you've got complement that with whatever that may be that you're pursuing, marketing, finance, business, whatever that may be. Again, that you're trying to use that to get that opportunity to sell yourself for an opportunity. Good morning, Eric.
Hey, how are you? I was stuck in a meeting.
Yeah, good to see you.
I had a quick question. It's about time for me to do my internship, which is about 300 hours, and I work full time and probably put in about 80 hours a week. How would you suggest someone to try to balance their internship while working a full-time job? And it was advised to me to look at a program that had football because there's not many women that are athletic directors because they don't have the experience overseeing football. I actually have football here at my program, but I can't do it here. And OSU and OU declined letting me do my internship with them. So I may have to do it out of state. So I'm balancing full-time job, doing an intern, and maybe having to do it remotely. Like, what are any suggestions you have for that?
Yeah, and I guess that was going to be my suggestion, would be looking at those opportunities to do something remotely. And I guess I'm assuming is there any way to craft your current role to satisfy the internship requirements? Is that potentially an opportunity?
I don't think so. it depends on what my advisors say.
Yeah, okay. And I guess my response for Shay, I mean, that's going to be difficult. Certainly, balancing a full-time job with that internship, looking at remote opportunities, looking kind of back to what I was saying earlier, just being persistent. There's opportunities out there, absolutely. Like I run into folks all the time that volunteer their time to do a project. Maybe they work outside of sports and volunteer time at a local college or sports program just to complete some sort of project that will help that school. At the same time, maybe to satisfy an internship opportunity. Would encourage you maybe to, again, be persistent, but could you package maybe something that you could send out to 8 or 10 different schools? Yeah, here's what you're looking for to complete the internship, different types of services maybe you could offer up, remotely that would satisfy the internship and then be a value back to that program. And I would share too, if you want to send it to me, I don't mind sharing that with SEC schools. I mean, we all kind of have our networks that we can share information, connect folks to, and I'm happy to share that out as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Excellent. I will add on top of that, because she did say a key thing. She'll have to check with her advisor on that. There is that opportunity. We can have that conversation where we're not trying to put her in a complicated situation, because we do extremely, understand how valuable her time is, what she's doing right now. We're not trying to force people to uproot in that, but that is a conversation that we can have to see how we might be able to accommodate her in meeting those standards where she's at. We can have that conversation. Not a problem.
Cool. Thank you.
I have a question, Clayton. This is Brandon. But before I ask the question, I'll just say a quick comment after what you and Dr. Camardi said in regards to the internship. It also is a possibility to do something with us, because you're getting the doctoral degree. Eventually you may want to get more into higher education and kind of transition or kind of balance between what you're doing with the athletic side, as well as getting to a little bit of higher education. So there could be some opportunity there to where, which would be primarily remote. And, we have a number of things that are going on in the fall that I think you could be of assistance with. And so that could be part of the internship, along with some of the things that Clayton and Dr. Camardi mentioned, just so you don't have to get all of those hours at one place. You can kind of maybe have 2 internship sites and kind of get your hours from both. But my question, Clayton, is, and you talked a little bit about this, but kind of knowing when to transition to a different place. All of us want to progress in terms of our careers, and it seems like you had a good understanding of when it was time for you to transition to something else. And I know it's kind of based on everybody's personal lives and individual basis, but what tips could you give to let's say a young professional to know when it's time to transition to something that's maybe a little bit more challenging or something that you're more passionate about?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brandon. And I will share, I've been incredibly blessed with the opportunities that I've had. I did not have a magic formula in mind early on that I could not have guessed my career would have played out the way it has over the last 3 decades when I got kind of started down this path with the sport management degree and pursuing this career. What I would offer up, I guess, as advice would just be to be patient. And that's something I probably did struggle with. It's naturally early in your career, you think you're ready for that next step. You think you're ready to be the assistant AD or associate AD or CFO. I almost took a job outside of college athletics with the PGA Tour. While I was at Florida State, there was something, though, in my heart that told me I wasn't done with college athletics. Whatever that was, it just something was telling me that was not the right opportunity at the time. I was pursuing a CFO job early on when I was at Florida State. I was pursuing a CFO job at South Florida. got down pretty far down the path, and then they put that position on hold. And in hindsight, that was a blessing for me that because a couple years later I got promoted at Florida State, and then the opportunity at Colorado. I like to share a story about a young professional that worked for me early on my time back here at Arkansas. He was the business manager. Got really anxious after 2 years. I tell folks all the time when they come on board, give me 3 to 5 years. Give me 3 years to really show you all sides of Razorback athletic finances. After 5 years, I'm going to start nudging you. I don't want you to get stuck. I want you to really be able to advance in your career, but try to tell folks to give me 3 to 5 years. After 2 years, this young professional, he was anxious. He was ready to be the CFO, accepted a job at, it was FAU down in, I guess, Boca Raton, Florida, accepted the job, took his wife down there on the site visit, called me back and said he made a mistake. And so I said, hey, your job's still open. So he came back to Razorback Athletics, worked with me another 3 years, and became the assistant AD at Auburn. A couple years later, became the CFO at Mississippi State, now is the AD at Georgia Southern. So I'd like to share that example. Just there was something that told him that was not the right move. He came back, was just patient, where he was here at Arkansas, and then opportunities really opened up after about 5 years here at Arkansas. So whatever that may look like for you or others, just try to fully vet the opportunities out there. Make sure that maybe try to look 2 steps down the road. Does that opportunity lead you maybe a step closer to whatever that end goal is with your career? But try to be patient. It's natural to get anxious early on. To after a couple of years, you think you're ready to be the AD or to be the CFO, and these jobs can be hard, especially in 2023 in college athletics. These are really hard jobs, to be an AD or to be the CFO and trying to navigate the economics that are changing in college athletics. So just be patient, and I'm just convinced those opportunities will come.
Thank you.
Taylor, I think you're muted if you had a question.
Well, thank you. I thought I was going. Here we go. As we begin sports here at the Academy, can you give any advice to Eric or myself for strategies for planning and promoting athletic events?
For planning or promoting athletic events, like the actual sport competitions?
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. I think one thing we've done really well here at Arkansas is, and we've hired, I think, really good people, is social media. We've got a great social content staff, and it's only roughly 4 to 5 staff members, but they've really done a great job of tapping into all the different social media channels out there. Storytelling is really important for us. We've got a passionate fan base about, they want to hear the story about, it could be the football player, it could be the soccer player, it could be the baseball, softball, track athlete. I mean, the stories we can tell about our student athletes, I think, are what our fans, donors, alums really want to hear. Sometimes, maybe we get in the way. It's all about the coach or the AD or whatever, but I think folks want to be able to feel and touch the student athletes and to be able to hear those stories. I would encourage you all, try to tie those events and sports back to the individuals you have that are competing. I think that's really worked well for us.
Thank you.
We started a channel, we call it Hogs Plus. It's a membership, a subscription-based program that fans can pay whatever, like $7 a month, and you get kind of the all access, behind the scenes videos, interviews, student athletes, coaches, and that's a lot of how we're telling these stories. And I can remember early on when it was presented to me, we started down a path of it's all about the finances. How much money potentially could we earn through this Hogs Plus opportunity? But then quickly it became clear that it was more about the content. So we're not going to make a bunch of money off this subscription, but we're going to create the content then that is going to help you sell the tickets, sell the sponsorships, create the donations. So we had to look at that opportunity a little different. It's not about the $7 a month. It's about the content you can create and that can help you as you're building your program and selling tickets and getting donations and everything that'll help support the program.
I have a question, Clayton, too. So we've been visiting some high schools, talking about careers in sport. And yesterday we had a discussion with one young man who was interested in becoming a general manager, some kind of administrative position within a sport organization. So what can you tell Taylor and I about how to talk to someone like that about how they get to where they need to be?
Another great question, and I would probably respond in a similar way to a comment I shared a few minutes ago. I don't know that there's any one perfect path, just to try to build out that resume in a way that you have some complementary experience in education. Don't make it all about just sports. A GM of a program, maybe there's a legal side to that. I think you hear a lot of folks pursuing law degrees and going on. Maybe that's more in the professional sports setting, but just be able to complement your experience in your education. You got to be able to speak to the sports side of things, but be able to speak to something that says you can be successful managing an enterprise, managing people, managing contracts, managing operations. So that can come through education, that can come through experience. Like I encourage folks to volunteer. Those internships are critical. And I say that just from, it is why I'm here today, is the fact that I had a sport management program that required me to complete an internship. And it required me at the time to pick up and move to Cleveland, Ohio, of all places. But it was absolutely the right opportunity then that led to additional opportunities in the future. So encourage folks to volunteer. We all need help. We all need volunteers at a golf tournament or a baseball regional or a softball regional. And so it's going to, again, be persistent, reach out, seek those opportunities. And you find places are looking for those interns, looking for those volunteers. Sometimes you just have to keep nudging people, and maybe they can connect you to the right person that can introduce you to those opportunities. But building out that resume, Eric, with the education, the experience, I think is probably the best advice I could share.
What brings you the most joy at your job?
Yeah, that Tuesday, Thursday from 6 to 7:15 when I'm in front of students sharing sport finance, and I end up doing it to students that are pursuing careers as a coach, an athletic trainer. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's compliance. They don't have finance background, don't have business background, but I can share. I share a lot of really just the fundamentals. Here's the things you need to know. I don't care if you're the coach, the AD, the academics counselor, or the business office staff member. But here's things you need to know about finance in college athletics and the professional sports industry. But being back in front of students, Taylor, is really the fun part for me. So it's that Tuesday, Thursday night, or it's the interactions I have. I'm the sport administrator for our basketball program, which allows me to connect in a different way with our student athletes. And you see young men coming in with goals in life. Maybe it's MBA, maybe it's the degree, and just helping those students accomplish whatever those goals are in life, I think is why you end up on a college campus. And so that brings me probably the biggest joy. It's definitely not the contracts and accounting and financial reports that you end up dealing with the bulk of your day.
Have you had to deal with NIL as the CFO?
Yeah, and so the way we approached it here at Arkansas is early on, it was really all about education, educating our student athletes on here's the opportunities you now have to pursue. And as you pursue these opportunities, here's the things you need to educate yourself on. Some of that was about, the social media platforms, making sure you're presenting yourself, branding yourself in the right way. Some of that was about maybe creating an LLC to, manage the business side of whatever you're pursuing with your NIL opportunities. So it was really about education. We hired a full-time staff member that was going to be his role, to be that point person to get the right people in front of our student athletes, connect the businesses back to student athletes. So if a business reached out with, hey, I'd like to potentially connect with a student athlete, we were creating those connections. So I've not had a direct role in that side of how we've handled NIL, but the role I've got really is the higher level. What's the financial impact, and it's coming. I don't think we've seen it in college athletics right out of the gate, because all of this is the plus one. It's the plus sponsorship opportunity. It's the plus donation to a collective. But at some point, sponsors are going to say, I can sponsor, Razorback Athletics directly, or I can sponsor a student athlete. Those are business decisions companies will make. Donors can say, I'm going to donate to the college athletic program, or I'm going to, maybe donate to a collective that's connected to a student athlete. So just trying to navigate what that looks like, Taylor, is really kind of where I focus my attention, because we've got folks that are dealing with the day-to-day on the education, the different reporting we have to do. We've got a full-time attorney that helps us navigate the state laws and compliance and what have you. And what I'm focused on is, what is that going to look like maybe in 2 to 3 years, and the financial impact it's going to have.
Do you feel that NIL would be a major threat to the sponsorships if they decide to pull out of sponsoring the entire athletic department or a team versus then just sponsoring the athlete themselves? And how do you get new people?
Say that one more time. How do you?
How would you get new sponsors, or like where would you? What would be your next turn?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think it's coming at some point. I think we've gotten feedback, probably from some of the lower level sponsors. Maybe it's the local restaurant that in the past bought a $25,000 sponsorship through Learfield, who is our multimedia rights holder. Maybe that company says, hey, I've only got $25,000 to spend. Now I can shift that and do that directly with student athletes. That will add up over time. So that's where I think the impact is coming. For us, where we're positioned well is, Learfield, these multimedia rights agreements, they guarantee you a rights payment every year. And it's on them to go out and sell the sponsorships to the local businesses or any of the national sponsors that they may have. So we're positioned well for the next 5 years till we've got our guaranteed rights payment for the athletic program. Learfield then has to go out and just kind of keep beating the bushes and finding those replacement sponsor opportunities. We have started to open up new categories. So in the past, beer was not a category we could have a sponsor for Razorback Athletics. The last couple of years, that is now a new category that we can sell sponsorships for. There's certain, I'm trying to think of the other ones. Gambling's coming at some point. The broader alcohol sponsorships, I think, are coming. So I think you'll probably see college athletic programs that are faced with that decision. In the past, maybe you were a little more conservative with who you align yourself with from a sponsor opportunity. That's probably going to shift going forward, as you might see schools that open that up, new sponsor categories, because they're trying to protect those sponsor dollars, maybe now that are going potentially to student athletes directly in the future.
Thank you.
Has the university fully recovered from the impacts of COVID as it relates to sponsorship, the whole financial package for the institution?
Yeah, great question.
the SEC was one of the entities that had the foresight to really kind of work with their lenders and
Yeah.
all of their sponsors and that, and they tried to kind of slow the impact over a period of time. So
Yeah.
you guys being a part of the SEC does have an impact on you as well.
Sure. Great question, Fred. And I'd like to share. I mean, we're not unlike any other college athletic program, professional sport organization, general business. I mean, COVID hit us out of the blue, right? We got smacked in the face in March of 2020, and we shut down. And I can still remember driving away from campus with this really weird feeling of, oh my gosh, we just stopped our athletic programs and had to send our student athletes home, and everybody had to make that decision, what's in the best interest of your athletic program, your university, your student athlete, personally, all kind of had to make those decisions, and we just stopped, right, in March of 2020. And we navigated the impact of COVID a couple different ways. We refinanced some debt early on. We made that decision in the fall of 2020 to refinance our debt payments over a 2-year period, not knowing what we assumed that impact from COVID might extend beyond just our 2021 fiscal year. Our venue capacity shrank, so we knew we were coming way back in ticket sales. We pleaded with our donors to stick with us. We had that contract with Learfield and some of our other, the concessions provider, the merchandise provider. So we just worked through the terms of those contracts to, here's the kind of make goods you had to do from a right standpoint. But the biggest impact was ticket sales, and we came backwards, roughly $30 million that we had to work through. We refinanced our debt payments. We cut costs. We had an early retirement program. We cut salaries for a period of time in that fiscal year. And then the SEC advanced us some money. So the SEC took the opportunity to work with a lender to borrow some money to advance each SEC school some money secured against future television revenues that we knew were coming in the 2025 fiscal year. But then we all came out of COVID last fiscal year pretty strong. So kind of back to your question, we recovered pretty quickly as we got back to, it was fascinating, just fans were ready to come back to sporting events, football, basketball. Baseball, we sold really well with football. Basketball was sold out. Baseball was sold out. Started selling pretty well with some of our other sports. Sponsors, we felt like they recovered pretty quickly. So we made Learfield good for 1 year, but then we were kind of back to, they were selling sponsorships at a strong level this past fiscal year. But we recovered. Really, 2021 was the year that we took the significant step back. We implemented the measures to kind of work our way through that financially, and we came back pretty strong in our fiscal year 2022. But so we feel like we're past COVID, but then now we're managing the financial impact of the Alston ruling and the NIL opportunities out there. So that's the other financial impact that we're now dealing with is how do we navigate that? We feel like we survived COVID at the SEC level. I give Commissioner Sankey a lot of credit. He really had this approach to here's what I know, here's what I don't know, and here's what I think may happen. And he was really pretty patient to work his way through that. Here's what we know today. We're going to make decisions based on what we know, what we don't know, and kind of what we think may happen. And he seemed to be very patient, he wasn't canceling events early on. He really allowed things to play out and make decisions based on the information we knew at the time, and seemed to work for us as we tried to protect our sports seasons. We had contingencies in place for what happens if you start football and have to pause mid-year. Here's what happens if you get through football and then have to pause. Here's what the financial impact might look like if you have to cancel everything. And there were some pretty dire financial projections if you had to cancel all the sports for the entire year, but really had that patient approach to things. And kind of worked our way through, came at it from a couple different areas that we refinanced debt, we cut expenses, had that advanced funding, and we came out of COVID pretty strong, and feel like now we're past COVID and kind of back to normal operations.
I have a question related to COVID. So it seems like everybody has kind of moved on. It's not affecting us as much as it was for a while there. Was there anything that you learned or that the University of Arkansas learned in anything financial or anything like that that you are still using that came out of what you did for COVID?
Yeah, I would say, a couple different things is I think COVID taught us is we can manage our operations differently, that we can recruit differently. You can do things now like Zoom. Our basketball program they're on Zoom calls 4 to 5 times a day with potential recruits instead of flying every recruit in for that campus visit to get to know him or her. I mean, you can now have these Zoom calls to accomplish some recruiting visits. You can schedule differently. I think we came out of it. Certainly, we had policies in place for a long time about not competing against in-state competition. That was an old Frank Broyles kind of policy he had in place. That changed. If I remember right, it changed during COVID. Now we compete against in-state teams. Sometimes it helps you, sometimes it hurts you. We lost to Arkansas Little Rock in baseball last night, but you know what? We're okay. Because we still got a top 10 baseball program. We just had an off night on the baseball field. But so I think it's how we recruit, how we schedule is different. But I think COVID taught us, again, we could manage our operations differently. We get stuck in these conversations that everybody needs more. But COVID taught us that we can take a step backwards and we can still manage. For us at $120 million, it's a lot of money. And we have these conversations all the time about needing more dollars in our budgets to do different things. And COVID taught us that, we can still manage at $120 million and be okay. So that, to me, that was one of the biggest takeaways COVID taught us is you can cut. And our approach is we cut in areas that would not have a direct negative impact on student athletes, not cut sports, to not cut scholarships, to not cut support of our student athletes, but we cut in a lot of areas that, again, it taught us that we would be okay managing our athletic program if we took a step back in certain areas. And I think it took that pandemic to probably convince us that we would be okay scaling back in certain areas.
I have one more question for you, Clayton. And it's still dealing with COVID. As we saw when it hit us and everything started shutting down and people were scrambling to figure out what they were doing in that, we discovered early on that the WTA was pretty much, prepared for this because it was well identified they had pandemic insurance.
Yeah.
Is that something that you see the industry of college athletics and professional sports altogether pursuing that line so that they're protected for the next one? Because the word is the next pandemic may hit us in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, great question. I do think, I think to answer your question, yes, absolutely. I think organizations are starting to look at, what that pandemic insurance opportunity might look like. The SEC had some insurance in place. I think the NCAA had a little bit in place. They had a dollar amount that they insured up to. It did not insure the entire revenue stream for the NCAA, but I think now schools and organizations are having a hard time getting that insurance. I mean, now that pandemic hit, I think insurance companies are hesitant to offer that insurance, or there's going to be kind of carve outs specific to COVID. I think I've heard the SEC had a policy in place for a couple of years, but then COVID was going to be an exclusion for any years beyond that. And then the premiums certainly are going to increase because the insurance companies they're not going to be in the business of losing money. But I absolutely think, Fred, that this caused organizations to open their eyes to, this is a risk now, and how do you manage that risk? You might manage it through, insurance. You might manage it through trying to self-insure at a certain level, which how do you build up some reserves to protect yourselves? Hey, if this hits and I go backwards $30 million in ticket revenue, can I self-insure to cover that for a year period of time? So I think folks are certainly opening their eyes to purchasing the insurance or trying to build up some reserves to protect against what is now known as a very real possibility. Is you might have to shut down your sports for a period of time, and if that happens, how are you going to manage it? All good, very good questions. Anything else I can share, Taylor? Or?
I don't have any further questions for you. I was gonna say we're almost at our hour mark, so if anyone else has any questions at this point, we can go ahead and get those answered, and then if not, then we'll close out here soon. Anyone? No, we're good? Okay. All right, well then, I guess that will conclude our segment for today. And I just wanted to, again, say thank you to those of you that attended. Fishay, thank you so much for being here today and taking the time. And Clayton, thank you again for taking the time out of your schedule today to be able to meet with us and help answer some of these questions for us.
Yeah, happy to do so. And just to offer up maybe a closing comment, just would use it as an opportunity to plug the U.S. Sports Academy. I mean, it absolutely was a game changer for me to provide the complement I needed to my background and experience to kind of chart me or set me down this path towards a career in the sports industry. So just a plug for that sport management degree and opportunity that the U.S. Sports Academy can provide. Then we'll just share my email address, claytonh@uark.edu. If anybody wants to reach out, happy to connect. I mean, again, really jump-started my career, was the networking I was able to do early on. So happy to be a resource and answer any questions folks might have, and wish everybody the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clayton.
Okay.
Thank you all. See you next time.
If you ever need any assistance from me or any of our faculty for any questions that might be had in the industry from other folks about what the Academy offers in that, by all means, point them our way, man. We're more than helpful and prepared to answer those kinds of questions.
Okay, will do. Thank you all. Have a good day.